So the question is 3ab plus 3a minus 3b minus 3. Alright, so we have got 4 terms there. Okay, now for you to do a question like this one on factorization by grouping, you have to know first how to factorize by a common factor. Okay, the first key concept on factorization is factorizing by taking out a common factor. Okay, and you were taught that last week. Okay, so if you look at this question here, okay, you have to use common sense and figure out how you are going to create a common factor that's a binomial. Okay, you have to create a common factor that is a binomial. So if you look at the first 2 terms, do we have a common factor? What's the common factor? It's 3a. Okay, so let's take out that 3a. So if I take out 3a, by now I hope that you all know that to get the first term of the binomial factor, you divide the first term here, this first term, by the common factor. Okay, you divide the first term of the original expression by the common factor. If you do that, you end up getting a b inside. And that b is a positive b. Okay? So you divide the first term here by the common factor, you get that. Then you put a plus here, because there's a plus there. Then you divide the second term here by the common factor, and you get a positive 1. Okay? It's not complicated. As long as you know how to factorize by a common factor, you shouldn't have any major problems. Right? Now, once you create this binomial factor, it should be a guide to you or a clue to you that, okay, the last 2 terms, you also need to create a binomial factor that's equivalent to b plus 1. Okay? So if you did the first part right, the second part should not be very challenging. Okay? So here now, we have got a negative 3b and a negative 3. What's the common factor? It will be minus 3. So this will be minus 3. Then you open your bracket. Now the first term of the binomial factor will be equal to this minus 3b divided by minus 3. And if you do that, you are going to get a positive what? B. It's minus 3b divided by negative 3b, and you get a b. This b here, this b is equivalent to that b. Okay? If it happens that you get a positive b here, then suddenly you write a minus b here. It means your factorization is incorrect. Okay? The signs must be the same, the letters must also be the same. Okay? Then, since we took out a negative 3, to get the second term of the binomial, it's not complicated. Divide the last term, which is a negative 3, by this common factor, which is also a negative 3. So negative 3 divided by negative 3 will give you what? A positive what? 1. Once you have these 2 binomial factors that are identical, you must start smiling. Okay? That you are on track. Okay? Then we have created a common factor, and that common factor is b plus 1. Okay? It's a common factor because this is 1 term, that's also 1 term. I hope you know that. Right? Then we take out the common factor. I prefer to take out the common factor first. So my common factor is b plus 1. Then I'll open the second bracket. Once I take out this common factor, that common factor here, to get the first term of the second binomial, you divide the first term here by the common factor. So 3a times b plus 1 divided by b plus 1 will give you a 3a. Okay? Then you divide the second term by the common factor b plus 1, you get negative 3. Okay. Now if you look at our 2 binomial factors, the first one cannot be simplified further, but the second one can also be simplified by taking out another common factor, which is a what? The 3. So we can check out that 3, and then we can write our final answer as 3 times b plus 1 times a minus 1. Like that. If you get to this point, it means that you have completely factorized this expression, right? I also need you to be aware that because of multiplication, you can even start with the a minus 1 here. You can put the a minus 1 first, where you have got the b plus 1. Okay? It's still correct because of multiplication. All right? Any question?
So I did that, but I used a different method. I first just added the bracket, and then I used the switch around method.
Okay, if you say you added the brackets, what do you mean?
I just said 3a plus 3ab plus 3a bracketed that, and then minus 3b minus 3 bracket.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Yes? Yeah, you can do that too. You can do that. You can take out a common factor first, or you can do it the way that I did. Okay. I want you to be aware that I'm not working from a memo, so I did the question based on what I first saw. Okay. So if you saw that, okay, there's a common factor that's a 3 there, then it's fine. You can take out the common factor first and then you carry on. But for this question, I would prefer to do it this way. In the end, we should all get to the same final result. Okay. Is there another question? Okay. You don't have a question, then let's move on to the next one. Huh? 5.4.
Yeah.
Right, was 5.4 part of the homework? Okay, 5.4. So that's exercise 5. Okay, 5.4. So we have, okay, let me use a different color here. That's 3a squared minus 2b minus 3b squared plus 2a. Okay, so that's the question there. Right? Now I want you to be aware that sometimes you may need to rearrange the terms, okay, so that you can be able to factorize by a common factor first, and then you carry on after that. So for this question, if you look at the first two terms, do we have a common factor? No. The moment the answer is a no, it means you need to rearrange the terms. Okay? You need to rearrange the terms. So in my case, for this question, I'm going to rearrange them in such a way that this 2a, I'll bring it here, that minus 2b, I'll take it to the end. Okay? So I'll swap the positions of the minus 2b and the positive. You need to use common sense when you are doing it. It's common sense. Okay? It's common sense. So the next step, I'll say 3a squared plus 2a minus 3b minus 2b. Okay? That's how I would approach it. Right? So I've rearranged the terms first. Then the next thing now, the first two terms, I'm going to determine a common factor. What's the common factor? Okay, this is supposed to be b squared, isn't it? Huh? Do we have a common factor then? Well, what's the common factor? It's what? It's a. So if I take out a, means I'll end up having a times 3a plus 2, like that. All right? Then it means that once I create this 3a plus 2, I need to create another 3a plus 2 then. But it's not going to be possible. Do you see that? Do you see that here, I've got minus 3b squared and there I have got 2b. Which means for me to create 3a plus 2 is not going to be possible. Right? Which means the way that I rearrange it, I might need to rethink. Okay? Go back to the drawing board. Okay? It won't work because I've created this binomial factor. I have to create it from these two terms. So what that means is I need to go back and rearrange again my terms. Because swapping the minus 2b and the 2a won't give me a common factor. Right? So I'm going to rearrange. Right? I'm showing you this because it's very important for you to be aware that sometimes you can rearrange and then you realize that no, I cannot determine the binomial factor. So you need to go back to the drawing board. Right? So I'm going to rearrange everything and I'm going to do it this way. Now I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to take the minus 3b squared to the second position, okay? And then I'll take the minus 2b to the end. So I can end up having 3a squared minus 3b squared, okay? That will be plus 2a minus 2b. Okay? The other strategy did not work because the idea is to create a common factor. Okay? So, from here now, the first two terms, I've got a common factor. What's the common factor? 3. So I'll take out the 3 times a squared minus b squared. Now here, we have created a difference of 2 what? Of 2 squares. We have created a difference of 2 squares. Then, the last two terms, if I factorize them, I'll have 2 times a minus what? Minus b. Okay? Now, the good thing is, this a minus b is a factor of a squared minus b squared. So I'm going to factorize by a difference of 2 squares. So if I do that, I'll get 3 times a minus b times a plus b plus 2 times a minus b. Okay? Now, if you look at it, you find that this factor, sorry, I wrote it the other way. My 2 is outside. Okay? So the a minus b, we've got the a minus b. That's our common factor. So I'm going to take out that what? A minus b. If I take it out, I'll end up having a minus b. I have to put that in the circular brackets. Right? Now, because I've got a set of brackets here which is circular, that is, the a plus b is inside circular brackets, I need to introduce square brackets. Okay? So I'll introduce square brackets. Remember, your first term is this expression here. That's your first term. Okay? So I'm going to divide that first term by the common factor. If I do that, I'll end up getting 3 times a plus b, okay? Then if I divide this 2 times a minus b by the common factor, I'll get minus 2. Then I'll close the bracket. Okay? Are you following that?
Yes.
Right. Now, can you simplify what's inside the square bracket? Oh, sorry, it's supposed to be a plus 2 there. This is a plus 2. Can you simplify what's inside the square bracket? No. Let's not remove any brackets. But if you want, you can. So if you remove the brackets, then you end up getting a minus b times 3a plus 3b plus 2. And this will be your final answer. Okay? That will be your final answer. Okay? You need to be aware that this question here is slightly more complex as compared to what you were used to from last year. Okay? It requires a bit of some thinking. Yes?
Sir, we do have a minus b and then brackets b times a plus b plus 2. We write how we have to answer.
Okay. I would say it's correct. If the question says factorize completely, okay, it is correct to stop here. But I would encourage you to go further and remove the square bracket. Okay? Because sometimes you never know whether the examiner allocates the final mark for the answer here or right at the end where I stopped. So just to go on the safe side, simplify it further until you get it. Okay? Any question? Huh? Exercise what? Okay. We are on exercise 5. What about exercise 6? 6.45. Okay, 6.45. All right. 6.45. Yes, David. 6 point what? 6.7. Did I give you 6.7? All right, I'm gonna do 6.7. Now with 6.7, I'm gonna show you maybe a technique that you were not taught in grade 9 of factorizing a trinomial. Okay? Because I'm aware that some teachers they don't teach that technique, but I've realized over the years that it is the easiest. So I'll do 6.7. Okay? So exercise 6, question 6.7. Right, if you got it right, it's fine, but I'm going to show you a method that maybe some of you, because I don't think the whole class knows this method. But I'm going to show you this method. That's 15x squared minus 23x plus 6. So that's our trinomial. Right, now from my experience, okay, of teaching factorization over the years, factorizing trinomials is a major problem. Okay? The main reason is because a lot of learners, they struggle with factors from grade 7 and 8. So if you struggle with factors, you are going to find that factorization of a trinomial, usually one which has got a coefficient of the first term that's more than 1, is going to become a challenge. Okay? Now, there are many ways of factorizing. Okay? But the key thing is you need to know that to factorize a trinomial, it depends on the correct factors of the first term and the last term. That's a key concept. This middle term here, it depends on the correct combination of factors of the first term and the last term. So if you don't get your factors of the first term and the last term correct, it will be impossible to get this middle term. Okay, now I'm going to show you this method. It also involves factorization by a common factor. Okay, make sure you listen. Like first thing, forget about the x squared. The coefficient of x squared is what? What's the coefficient of x squared? It's 15. What is 15 times 6? 9. What is 15 times 6? 90. Okay? It's 90. But by the way, before I carry on, when you wrote the investigation, how come some of you don't use the correct mathematical language, like coefficient? How come? Coefficient, constant. How come a number of you here, you did not use that mathematical language? Don't just say number. What is the name given to that number? Your grade 8 teacher, grade 9 teacher, they taught you about the concept of a coefficient, okay? A constant. This positive 6, we call it a constant. The positive 15, we call it a coefficient. I expected that language in the investigation. Every subject has got its own language. Every subject has got its own language. Be familiar with the language of every subject. For maths, you need to know the language for the subject. When I teach, I use the language for the subject. Okay, so we have multiplied the 15 and the 6 and we got 90. The next thing now is very important. Which two factors of 90 are such that if you add them, you will get the coefficient of x, which is minus 23? Can you figure that out? Which two factors of 90 are such that if you add them, you will get minus 23? Can you work that out? Find two factors of 90 such that if you add them, you will get minus 23. It will be 18 and what? But be careful of the signs. Remember, the coefficient of x is minus 23. So which two factors of 18, based on their sign, sorry, the two factors of 90, considering that their signs, will give you minus 23. Yes, Simon? Thank you. So it will be minus 18 and minus what? 5. Now, among those two, okay, you need to decide which one, when you rewrite this expression, you write it like this. I'm going to rewrite the expression by including those two factors, minus 18 and what? And minus 5. So I'll write it as 15x squared. Now, using those two factors of 90, minus 18 and minus 5, I can rewrite this minus 23x using those two factors as minus 5x, okay, minus 18x plus 6. I started with the minus 5x first because minus 5 and 15, they share a common factor. Okay? They share a common factor. Also, the minus 18 and the 15, they also share a common factor, but I chose to start with the minus 5. Have you ever had this method? Raise your hand if you've ever heard about this method. Raise your hand. Okay. Now, from now on, you're going to find that it is probably the easiest to factorize any trinomial. Okay? Then, from here, we now factorize by a common factor. Okay? The first two terms, what's the common factor? 5x. Right? Open bracket. If you divide the first term by 5x, you get what? 3 what? 3x. Divide the second term by 5x, you get minus 1. Okay? Then, the last two terms, what's the common factor? It's not 3. Okay, but there's a minus 18 there. Remember, when you're factorizing by a common factor, once you create a binomial factor like 3x minus 1, okay, first, it means when I factorize here by a common factor, I also need to create 3x minus what? Minus 1. So, what will be the highest common factor of minus 18x and positive 6? It will be negative 6. It will be negative 6. If you want to create this 3x minus 1, then it means you have to take out negative 6. If you take out positive 6, you will never be able to get the first binomial factor. It will never happen. So, take out minus 6, then open bracket, minus 18x divided by minus 6 will give you 3x. Positive 6 divided by minus 6 will give you negative 1. Once I have the two binomial factors that are identical, I should start smiling. Okay? Your heartbeat should not increase. Okay? You should be very calm. So you check out your common factor here. That's 3x minus 1 times 5x minus 6. Then I'm done. Okay? If you want to prove that the two factors are correct, use FOIL and then go back here. Okay? So today you've learned a new technique, which I believe, so far from all the techniques I've used in the past over the years, is the easiest to factorize any trinomial. Yes? Yes. Okay? If you are struggling with factorizing a trinomial, that would be a calculator. If you've understood what I just said, and I've made a video of it as well, you can watch it later during your own time. Go over it as many times and master it, and then you become a guru of factorizing trinomials. And from now on, going forward, when you see a trinomial, you won't have any major problems. Okay? You do it with confidence and within a short space of time. Okay? Right. At this stage, I don't want to tell you about how to use the calculator because I want your brains to be as sharp as possible. So the method of using a calculator to factorize a trinomial, I will discuss that later in the year when you start doing functions. Not now. So for now, your brain must do it. Okay? Any question? Right, let me carry on. Right, you said another question was what? 6.45. Okay, 6.45. All right. Now 6.45, if you had done it, okay, you face some challenges. Okay, I'm going to try and make it as simple as possible. Okay, so from now on, in this class, I don't want to hear or to see anyone failing to factorize the trinomial. Okay, that should never happen. If it used to happen, today is the last day. Okay, this question here. Here. Okay. All right. This question here, it's a little bit complex. Okay? Now we can make it simple by introducing a new variable. Okay? We've got x. We can eliminate the x and then later reintroduce it by using another letter. Okay, so the letter that I'm going to use is k. Okay? It is your choice in terms of what letter you like to use. Okay, you can use y as long as it's not x. So I'm going to use k. Okay, so this was part of your investigation. Okay, this was part of the investigation. Okay, if you had tried to do this question, then you saw the investigation, your brain must have connected that I think I saw this somewhere. Okay, so let k be equal to the binomial x minus. The reason why you have to introduce that substitution is because the question itself is very complex for you to factorize it directly. So you have to introduce a new variable. Okay? Once we say let k equal to x minus 1, means where there is x minus 1, we'll put k there. If we do that, we are going to end up having a trinomial that you are familiar with. So that will be 3k squared plus 16k plus 5. Okay? Now we have got a trinomial that you are familiar with from last year. Okay? Then you can use any method to factorize, including the one that I just showed you. So I'm going to use that. 3 times 5 gives me 15. Which two factors, if I add them, I'll get a positive 16. It's 1 and 15. Okay? So I'm going to write this as 3k squared plus 15k plus k plus 5. Okay? Then I need to create a common factor, right? So the first two terms, what's the common factor? It's 3k. So 3k times k plus 5. Then there I'm going to have plus k plus 5. I would encourage you to put a 1 here. I'm going to use a green color. Put the 1 outside the bracket. Okay? You put the 1 outside the bracket. Once you have got your two binomial factors, then it becomes easy. So the final answer in terms of k is going to be 3k plus 1 times k plus 5. This is not the final answer. Our final answer must be in terms of x. So I'll go back to my substitution. Where there is k here, I'll put the x minus 1. Okay, because my answer must be in terms of x. So my final answer will be 3 times x minus 1, okay, plus 1, I can put that in square brackets, times x minus 1 plus 5. I'm not done. You also need to look at whether what's inside the square bracket can be simplified. Okay? So, the first bracket, square bracket, I can simplify because if I remove the circular bracket, I'll get 3x minus 3, but there is a plus 1 which is on its own there. So I can simplify. So if I move on to the next page, I will have 3x minus 3 plus 1 in one circular bracket. Then the second one is going to be x minus 1 plus 5. That will give me x plus 4. Okay, so that will give me x plus 4. So my final answer was going to be 3x minus 2 times x plus 4. That will be my final answer. Okay, if you wanted to use a long method from here, you could remove this circular bracket and that one too. Then you group the like terms, simplify until you create a trinomial. Okay, that's a longer method, maybe you could say. Okay, so there are two ways of doing this question. I prefer this substitution one because some learners, the moment they see this and that, the brain will shut down. The first time they see that, the brain will shut down. So it's better to use the substitution method because you are familiar with a trinomial like this from grade 9. Okay, any question? Any question? Okay, if you don't have any question, then allow me to move on to the next one. The next one is what? Huh? Okay, 6.47. Okay. So this question, if you want, you can remove the brackets, but the easiest way is just to use the substitution method. So here I have got two variables, that is the 3x the x and the y. Okay, I can still introduce a third variable. So I'm going to use k again. So I'll say let k be equal to 3x minus y. If I do that, I'll end up having 8 minus 6k plus k squared. Okay? Then I need to rearrange based on the order of the terms. So that will be the same as k squared minus 6k plus 8. Okay? The good thing is you are familiar with this trinomial from last year. Okay? So I'm going to factorize it. This one here, because the coefficient of k squared is a 1, it should be very easy for you to factorize. Okay? So you factorize that. You get k there and the k there. This is minus 6k, so I can put minus 4 there and the minus 2 there. That shouldn't be a problem because this is a simple trinomial. It's not as complex as the other 2 or 3 that I did. Okay? As long as the coefficient of the first term is a 1, you should not have any issues to factorize that trinomial. Okay? Once I'm here, I'll go back to my substitution. Where there is k, I'll put 3x minus y. Where there is k, 3x minus y. So my final answer is going to be 3x minus y. Okay, so let me put the minus 4. I'll put that in one bracket times. If I put that 3x minus y here, I'll get 3x minus y plus, sorry, minus 2. Okay? And then you stop there. You can't simplify further. Okay? So if you have challenges after this lesson, this should not become a challenge anymore. Then you need to go home and you practice more to become better at it. Okay? Any question? Right? You don't have a question? Yes? Okay, in most cases, for questions like this, you should have the same binomial factor inside the brackets. Okay? It should not be that complicated. If it is, it happens that you have got minus y and the plus y there, then my suggestion is you can't use the k method, the substitution method. You have to remove the bracket, you simplify, group the like terms, and then you carry on. Okay. If you don't have a question, then allow me to introduce a new technique on factorization. That's sum, okay? Sum of a difference, it's actually a sum of two cubes or a difference of two cubes. Those are new concepts. We haven't done that yet. Okay? So I asked you to write down the notes already. I'm just going to emphasize some key things, then the lesson stops. Okay? All right. In mathematics, sometimes we've got algebraic expressions that are called the difference of two cubes or sum of two cubes. So, first one, if I give you, say, x cubed plus y cubed, and if you are asked to factorize this, okay, you need to know that from now on it is possible to factorize a sum of two cubes. Okay, when you factorize it, you always get two factors, a binomial and a trinomial. The trinomial cannot be factorized. Okay, so the first term of those two factors is going to be a binomial. Okay, so if I have a plus here between the two terms, first thing, find the cube root of the first term, it's x plus. Find the cube root of the second term, it's a y. Alright, I'll carry on in the next lesson.